First question for tonight is, Dear Ajahn, may I seek your advice? I am currently a vegetarian by personal choice, as I wish not to contribute to the animal consumption industry. Recently, a friend kindly gifted me a traditional Chinese medicine that contains animal parts, and I felt uneasy consuming it, yet I also don't want to waste their kind intention and effort. I understand that the Buddha did not mandate vegetarianism for all. May I ask, in terms of the Dhamma, how should I skillfully approach this situation, both in terms of my actions and my way of thinking? Thank you very much, Luang Por.
Up to you. It's your choice, isn't it? Yeah, some medicines, traditional medicines, have animal parts in them. Some modern medicines have animal parts in them. What I tend to do is look around, see if there's an alternative that doesn't contain animal parts. And sometimes you can find that if you look hard enough, or sometimes just decide not to take something because it's got animal parts, because I'm a vegetarian as well. And you just make your choice, but doesn't mean to say if you do eat something made of animal parts, you're doing something evil. That's a different issue, isn't it? The state of mind, the intention behind the act. If someone's given you a medicine with animal parts, to take that medicine for your health may not be in any way an unwholesome act. But it could be. You could become develop a lot of fixed views and attachments to certain medical treatments and so on. So it's something you have to investigate for yourself. So I try not to make a problem out of it. I certainly don't make a lot of unnecessary suffering out of it. But if you decide to take the medicine, it's your choice. If you decide not to take it, that's your choice as well. We're here to practice to remove the causes of suffering from our mind, greed, anger, and delusion. So maybe make that your priority, I would.
Sadhu Luang Por. So far, that's the only question that has come in. Here's another one. Dear Ajahn Kalyano, thank you for the Dhamma talk. Can you please talk a little bit about what is happening right now internationally and how best to navigate these time of wars? Currently, we notice that the Dhamma is almost absent. Rather, bombing, genocide, mass murders, continuous lies and manipulations seem to lead humanity to a serious threat of nuclear calamity. This is not just restlessness of mind or some wild thoughts, but real events happening in front of our eyes. The Dhamma seems not applicable for certain minds. Is force and violence justifiable in certain extreme situations? Thank you.
Interesting. I just spent 10 days in Thailand meeting teachers and fellow monks and teaching meditation. Didn't have to talk about the international situation at all. It didn't bother me at all. I didn't have much information about the international situation at all. So, to be perfectly honest, I'd say it is possible to live and practice the Dhamma without thinking too much about all this stuff. It's one of the burdens of the modern digital age is that you're bombarded with repetitive news about all this stuff. And of course it's going on, and I'm not saying to ignore everything going on around you, but I think we also tend to go the other way and spend too much time obsessing or getting caught up in all this news and people's views and opinions and these conflicts around the world. If you're not immediately in the job, say you're a politician or somebody, or in the army or somebody, okay, it may directly affect your job and your role in the world and what you're doing. But for many of us, there's no direct thing we have to do with a lot of this stuff, wars going on in other countries. So it's not wrong necessarily just to ignore it. If they're going to fight wars, let them get on with it until the karma is worn out. If they ask me, I would say don't fight a war, try and solve your problems peacefully. But they don't ask me, they don't ask you. So we can get on, we can afford to get on with our practice, and it's not putting your head in the sand or being irresponsible to do that. Because maybe if there are enough people practicing the Dhamma peacefully in the world, that will affect everyone else as well in a good way. So I would do more Dhamma practice, meditate more, do more dana, generosity, help those people you can help yourself through the practice, carry on doing what you're doing, and just observe the news a little bit, enough to know what's going on. As I said, there's not a lot you can do, is there? If there's some war going on somewhere, you can't really affect that. So I wouldn't spend too much time on it. What you tend to do, I think, most people, they watch too much news and then talk about it with their friends, think about it, worry about it, and make themselves miserable unnecessarily, if we're honest. You don't need to do that. You can carry on doing many good things in this world, even when other people unfortunately have lost their way and are hurting each other. Just carry on doing the good Dhamma practice that you know. That would be my advice, because you can still do that. You still have your golden opportunity to practice the Dhamma. The good Dhamma is still here, available in the world. The Buddhist teachings are here. You can still practice dana, keep precepts, meditate. You can become a monk or a nun if you want. All the good opportunities are still with us. And it's unfortunate there are conflicts in the world, but that's nothing new. In the time of the Buddha there were conflicts. From the time of the Buddha till this day, there have always been conflicts and problems in the world. And if they are immediately affecting you, well, you do the best you can to sort them out. If they're not, if they're further away, I wouldn't worry too much about them. I'd get on with your Dhamma practice while you can. Because, the bigger problem is what I was saying earlier. Aging, sickness and death affects us all. We don't know how long we're going to live. We might have another day or another year or another 10 years or whatever, but we don't know. So while you have your time, carry on practicing this Buddhist path towards enlightenment, because you don't know when you die what will happen after you die, where you'll be reborn, what will go on next. You have your chance now, here and now. Take it while you have it. And even if there are other people suffering and creating suffering in the world, well, we can have sympathy for them. But if there's nothing we can immediately do, then just leave them to it and get on with your own practice. That would be my suggestion.
Sarulumbu. Next question. Dear Lumpo, thank you for your talk. Hope you're well. When I meditate and get peaceful, some silly thoughts of, this is so good, I'm getting enlightened, I'm so good, come up strongly and disrupt the peacefulness, which would allow me to go deeper. I get a bit upset with that. Do you have any advice? Thank you and wish you all well.
Just keep going. It's a reasonable thing you're experiencing. It's quite common when we do find the mind becoming peaceful, we tend to attach to that in one way or another. So we often say, oh, I am peaceful, and perhaps we've been practicing for a while, so we've been looking for this and hoping for this, so when it happens, we attach to it. But be careful. it's not sure, is it? I mean, just keep observing, keep practicing, keep observing. Feelings of peace, peaceful states of mind, samadhi, fades. Like it comes and goes. You know, when the conditions are right, your mind can become very peaceful, go very deep. And then when conditions change, it can fade away. And like you say, one of the conditions, maybe you attach to it too much. And that very attachment actually is a kind of agitating factor in the mind, isn't it? Because you cling to the feeling of peace or to the idea, I am peaceful, I am good. And that can actually take you away from the very thing you were hoping for or experiencing. But just keep watching, keep observing, learning, and try to keep letting go of the sense of I, me, myself that might form around even the successes and the good things that happen in the practice. In the end, peaceful states of mind are just peaceful states of mind. We don't have to tell anyone about them. We don't have to make a big deal out of them. We just know them. Oh, the mind is peaceful at the moment, and then there'll be times when it's not peaceful. And all the time we are learning to see where we can abandon unwholesome mental states rooted in greed, anger, and delusion. So some of them are very coarse, some of them are very subtle. So the mind that attaches to a sense of peace, states of samadhi, even the thought, I'm enlightened. You know, it's probably a subtle sense of greed. It's delusion there as well, but a subtle greed because you want something, you want to be somebody or be something. So that's something to investigate, isn't it? And one of the ways you investigate is notice that it may be impermanent. The peace comes and goes. Even the feeling of this is me, this is who I am, comes and goes. All of this you can investigate. And little by little, you're cleansing your mind of some of those delusions, some of those habits. And that will hopefully help you to go deeper in your practice, you know, as you were describing. So keep going, keep practicing. But contemplate, it's not sure, it's impermanent.
Sadhu. Another question. Dear Lumpur, I've noticed that sometimes the more I try not to think about a particular thought, the more it seems to arise. May I ask, how can I skillfully overcome this? Thank you, Lumpur.
Well, you have to experiment, see what works for you. Everyone's a bit different. You're right, you know, we tend to focus on something as a fault or a problem or an obstacle in our meditation, and the more we think about it, the more it comes up and the bigger it becomes. So you do have to try and find a way to relax a bit towards that particular issue or thought. So sometimes you think of something else that makes you relax and brings the mind to a more wholesome state. So you think of the opposite. Sometimes just practice patience. Just keep patiently watching, and all mental hindrances, thoughts, states of mind, well, they come and go, don't they? Because in their nature, they're impermanent. So if you can watch long enough, you'll notice that. You'll see, oh, it comes, it goes. Earlier I was irritated, now it's gone. Earlier I was sleepy, now I've gone through that. Earlier I was sitting there desiring something, now that's gone. You'll learn that way just by patiently observing, keep practicing observing your changing states of mind, and you can apply what you learn next time, over and over again. You hopefully you do gain some real insight then, and that insight sticks with you, and so next time, whatever the problem was, doesn't bother you so much. But one of the reasons, you know, a particular thought, idea, way of thinking bothers us all the more is because you're trying to get rid of it. So, you know, you try and get rid of it, it's like you're pushing it away. So you're actually doing something there. And that action can actually intensify the whole experience. If you can do anything to just kind of do the opposite and just allow it to be there, but just be aware. So sometimes asking questions, sometimes just turning to something peaceful like the breath, and you allow this particular problem or way of thinking that's bothering you just to be there, you accept it, you allow it, but you don't feed it, you don't do anything to it, you don't push it away, you don't do anything to it, you just watch from a place of peace. The more you can do that, probably the quicker it will fade out and dissolve.
Sadhu Luang Por. Next question. Dear Ajahn, I appreciate your talk on aging, sickness and death. Can you elaborate how one who is already aging and facing chronic sickness contemplate on these three themes? While contemplating on these three, I suddenly experienced symptoms and got a little sad and anxious. Perhaps these are not the right topics for my stage?
Perhaps you may be right, but also the feeling of sadness and anxiousness, if it's not too extreme or intense, maybe it's just a little prompt for you to try harder in your Dhamma practice. You know, we don't turn to consider aging, sickness and death to make ourselves depressed or give up or feel like we're in a hopeless situation, but simply to bring our mind to see the truth. And seeing the truth can make you sad, make you anxious, makes you aware, oh, all the things I've been clinging to are not going to last, they're not really mine. Even life itself is not going to be, I'm not going to be alive forever, and I don't know when I'm going to die yet. So even these sort of simple truths can make you feel sad, make you feel a little bit agitated, but just be patient with that and keep reflecting, keep practicing. There is a sadness to life because it doesn't last. We're not here forever. The people we love won't be here forever. That's the truth. The sadness is we can use that to spur us on to develop more mindfulness, more insight, and free the mind from its normal clinging and delusions. So, the mind that is free is not sad because it completely understands the way things are and doesn't attach with delusion. But until you're free, then the sadness is kind of like a motivation almost. It's like saying, oh, things are sad, things won't last forever, what can I do? And it makes you look around, perhaps, or for many people, it makes you look around for the way out, for the way to practice the way out. Suffering in whatever form it happens to you and you're experiencing it has its advantage or its benefit in that it can spur you on to look for a way out of suffering. If you're physically ill, you got pain, discomfort, something's wrong, it can make you go to the doctor and seek out a remedy. The same with your mental suffering, even though it's annoying or sad, or you're unhappy in some way. If the next step is you look for a way out, you turn to the Buddha, to the Dhamma, you're looking for a way to practice, well, that can actually mean suffering can have a useful role to play. It's not that you're looking for extra suffering in life, but when you are experiencing it and you notice that, then you look for your way out through the practice. So it can motivate you, spurs you on to practice. So a bit of suffering, it's not what we want, we're not looking for it, but when it's there, we'll use it to your advantage.
Sadhu Luang Por. Next question. Dear Ajahn, I have heard that being reborn in Tushita heaven is quite difficult. May I ask, how can one make the aspiration to be reborn there? And what kind of practice would help one draw closer to that goal? Thank you, Ajahn.
Why not aspire to Nibbana? Better. Tushita heaven is still temporary. Like you say, only people with enough merit, good karma could be reborn there, and it won't last forever. Nibbana might be a better aspiration. Having said that, well, if one was to be reborn in Tushita heaven, that's a good thing. Usually it's a place, they call it the heaven of the peaceful. People who develop a lot of skill with meditation, do a lot of good for others, kind, compassionate people. Quite often they're reborn in Dushita heaven. They say the bodhisattvas are reborn in Dushita heaven. So not a bad place to be, but I would still make your aspiration to be for Nibbana, for the end of suffering. And if on the way you happen to be reborn in Tushita heaven, good, that could be an advantage. The mind has to be very refined to be reborn in Tushita heaven. You have to have a very refined, well-developed sense of hiriyottapa, and the good karma from practicing dana, sila, bhavana. Associating with sangha is probably a very important factor, I would say. If you associate with sangha, you support sangha, or you become a member of the sangha, or you support sangha, listen to and respect sangha, respect the noble ones, listen to the Dhamma, respect the Dhamma. These are the kind of qualities that bring your mind up. So these may be causes for you to be reborn in Dushita heaven if you haven't reached Nibbana. But I wouldn't get too obsessed with, the level of heaven that you're aiming for. I would work on your practice day by day just to see, are you following greed, anger, delusion? Is your mind in a coarse state from day to day, or right here, right now? Are you getting caught into anger, greed? Do you keep precepts? Do you harm other beings in your speech, your actions? Are you developing more mindfulness, more insight, or not? There's some basic practices we have to get established before we need to discuss about the levels of the heaven realm that we may or may not be reborn in. So I'd focus on the here and now, today. How are you practicing today? Are you improving your life through your practice today? And the future comes out of the present, doesn't it? So if you're developing the present moment in this present day well, that's the best basis for a good future as well.
Sadhu Lumbu. Next question. Dear Lumpur, sometimes I feel warm and happy in the heart. How can I know if it's metta or mudita? Thank you.
Well, these two qualities are like brother and sister, so they're so close. They may be more or less arising together, or it just depends what the object, how you're turning your mind at that moment. If you are feeling warm and happy, good, and that's already good. How are you directing your mind? Are you directing just to the basic sense of well-wishing for yourself or for others? And if it's a really strong object, we say radiate in all directions. So without choice, it's a choiceless well-wishing for all beings in all directions, in all realms, and all kind, creepy crawlies, carnivorous raging bulls and tigers, human beings, good and bad, all beings, just wishing all beings to be well. Mudita as an object, it's more those who are free from suffering, successful, happy, may that happiness continue. May they be healthy, happy, live a long life, may they be successful in their Dhamma practice, and the success may continue. So of course somebody may be suffering, when you practice metta for them, mudita, you probably wouldn't call it mudita if you're wishing someone who's suffering well. You might call that karuna, compassion, or just basic metta for other beings, knowing that in general beings do have their suffering, so you have a general well-wishing. Mudita is more specific. May their success, their happiness, their good health, the good things they have continue. It's the direct opposite of jealousy. Rather than being jealous of them and annoyed that things are going well for them, you're feeling good. You're feeling happy for them and with them. You're sharing in them, or in your own success, your own good health.
Sadhu. Another question. Dear Lumpur, thank you for sharing your wisdom. I have a recent experience with a friend who has taken actions that adversely impacted me. I intend to stay away from that individual, which I did. However, it felt like avoidance, and you mentioned avoiding problems might lead to another. Can you please advise what would be the right thing to do? Thank you very much.
Yeah, I don't know all the details of your situation, but sometimes avoiding a person who is causing you harm is fine. The Buddha didn't just say, "Oh, just patiently slog on with this person who is hurting you every day." Sometimes the best thing is to avoid them if you can, but sometimes you can't avoid them. Sometimes you have to look more deeply at the problem. Maybe the person is only part of the problem, maybe you're part of the problem as well. As I said, I don't know your particular situation, so I can't comment, but just look into it as deeply as you can. And as a general teaching, if someone is hurting you and you can avoid them, maybe that's the simplest solution, if that can be done successfully. But when you do meet them, well, just be very mindful, careful. If there's somebody who has the potential to hurt you, you have to go into any meeting, or when you're in their presence or around them, well, you have to be very careful, don't you? Avoiding a person, when you say it might lead to another problem, well, that possibly is indicating in your mind you're avoiding with aversion. So sometimes you avoid one person because you're annoyed with them, angry with them, and then you go and start telling your other friends that you don't like this first person, backstabbing, gossiping, hurting them, or trying to get back at them in some way out of revenge. So be careful of that. If you're avoiding simply because you know you don't get on well together, things don't go well, and there's no real need to be together, well, maybe that's coming from a place of wisdom. But if it's coming more from aversion, like you say, it can lead on to some follow-up problems because you're basing your action on aversion. So you have to watch your speech, your action, or even just your thoughts. How often we're miles away from the person we don't like, but we still think of them because we haven't yet fully let go of our anger or aversion. So see if you can do that, and meditation can help there sometimes. You meditate on someone who you don't see anymore, or you're not with them, but you're aware you're still holding on to a grudge. So in your meditation, you're consciously developing goodwill, forgiveness, some of the positive attitudes directed towards that person. And then if you actually meet them again, well, maybe that will help. Or if you never meet them again, at least mentally you're clearing up some of the aversion you've been hanging on to in your mind. So I would look into that. When you avoid people, what is the motivation, and what are you still carrying around in your mind, if anything?
Sadhu Lumpur. Next question. Good evening, Lumpur. What happens to minds in sudden death, like in a crash?
Yeah, it depends on the person, I think. If it's somebody with a very well-developed mind, then whatever way they die, then maybe their goodness of their mind, their good qualities are preserving their happiness and their good state of mind. So even in a sudden death, that person may be reborn in a good place, or their mind may be still in a good state. But also you can probably see the potential if somebody dies suddenly, unexpectedly, there's this chance that their mind is just confused by what's happened. So the body has died suddenly through crash or something very sudden that came out, sudden cause, and the mind hasn't realized that it's death. So sometimes teachers talk about this, the person who doesn't know they're dead. for a while anyway, and they're kind of floating around or hanging around or just confused, not sure. So, probably we would say that person becomes a ghost, if you want to give them a name, simply because they're confused at this sudden change of realm, change of existence from being a human to going somewhere else. And that's a large part of traditional Buddhist practices around funerals and death and dying, is that people make merit for the dead, because often they believe maybe they are just confused and hanging around. Their consciousness is close by because they don't know how to let go. They haven't got enough good causes to be reborn in a good place yet, as a human or in a heavenly realm. So they're kind of hanging around. So it's that understanding that leads to a lot of practice of making merit for the dead, funerals, inviting monks to give talks, chanting, making offerings, doing acts of generosity and charity for the dead, meditating for the dead, chanting for the dead, and so on. Partly is to help stabilize them so that they can be reborn. And that stabilization, maybe there's a realization and acceptance. I'm gone. I'm no longer alive. Famous story of a young monk who could remember his past lives. And Ajahn Mahabua wanted to check that he was a well-known teacher who was considered to be enlightened and to have psychic powers, but he wanted to check whether this young monk really could remember his past lives. So the young monk was telling him what happened in his previous life that he could remember, how he had been, I think he was a novice or a young monk in his previous life, and he had got malaria and died, and then he didn't know that he was dead. And so he's as if just kind of wandering around the monastery that he had died in, not realizing he was dead. And he went out to the back of the monastery where there was an area, a charnel ground, and some of the villagers were there digging a hole for somebody who had died. And at the time he didn't realize he had died. So he asked the village headman, who was leading this group of people to dig the hole, who were they digging the hole for, as someone died. And of course the village headman didn't hear him because he's now a ghost, and he didn't know, the ghost didn't know he was dead, and the village headman couldn't see the ghost, didn't know the ghost was speaking to him. So the monk, who was now a ghost, got frustrated. In his frustration, he lashed out at a bush nearby and sort of thrashed the bush, sort of saying, "Why is no one listening to me? Why is no one answering me? What's going on?" And for some reason, this ghost was able to make the bush shake with his rage of being ignored by everyone. And as soon as everyone saw the bush shake and they couldn't see the ghost, they all got scared and ran away. So they all ran away, having ignored him, and he just thought, nobody's talking to me here, something's up. And so he just wandered off, started wandering out of the monastery. This is all a recollection of his previous life that he later recounted. And so he wandered off, and he wandered for a long time, through the fields and through different places. I don't know if he'd realized he was dead, but anyway, he'd wandering for a long time. Eventually came to a house, and he looked at this house, and he could see there were Buddhist monks in there chanting. So he went in, he was attracted by that. I guess he had faith. But he's also very thirsty. So he said, I've been walking for a long time, very thirsty. And he went into the house, and he wanted a drink of water, but again, nobody can see him or listen to him. So he just headed to the water jar and sort of went up to the water jar, and he was about to take a drink of water. The next thing he knew, in this recollection of his past life, was that he was born to the woman of that house. He was reborn there. and grew up and reordained as a monk, and then had this past life recollection from his meditation, and he told Ajahn Mahabua. So Ajahn Mahabua wanted to check it out as best as he could to verify some of the facts and the story that this young monk was telling about his previous life, to see whether it was a previous life recollection, whether it was genuine. So he said, "Oh, do you remember the monk who was your teacher in that previous life when you were a monk and died?" He said, "Yeah, I remember the monastery, the teacher." So he took him to a funeral of a senior monk, where lots of other senior monks would be, hoping that he would be able to see the abbot, the teacher of his former monastery. And the young monk went there and he saw him, and he said, "That's the monk who was my teacher in my last life." And Ajahn Mahabua said, "Ah, yeah," because he knew the teacher. And then they took him to the monastery where he had died from malaria in his previous life. And they said when he arrived at that monastery, because time had changed, time had passed from one life to the next, there's a big gap in time. When he was walking into the monastery, he said, "Oh, where are the two big yang trees?" Yang tree is a big forest tree that grows very tall, large in northeast Thailand. He said, "There used to be two yang trees at the front of the monastery. Where they've gone? Where have they gone? When I lived there, there were these big trees there." And the abbot said, "Oh, we cut them down about 20 years ago or something. So after the time that the monk had died, before the time he was now living his new life, these trees had been cut down." And he could remember them from his past life. So that these kind of details that he could remember about the monastery from his past life, things had changed, buildings had changed, people had changed. So they were verifying his story, and he seemed to have a lot of memories and knowledge about things that he shouldn't know about because he was too young in this life. So it's just one story. But one of the interesting points was that when he died, he didn't realize he was dead for a while. And apparently that's quite common, especially with road accidents and that kind of sudden death. Perhaps the person doesn't realize mind and body separate as the body dies, and they don't yet immediately know what's going on, as you would imagine. It hasn't happened to me yet, so if it happens, I'll let you know what it's like.
Sadhu Lumpur. Another question. Dear Lumpur, thank you for the teaching. In Buddhist blessings and chanting, there are 4 Pali phrases: Ayu, Wana, Sukha, Bala, for long life, beauty, happiness, and strength, frequently found in blessings given during meals, sharing of merits, and other supportive contexts. Please explain how we should understand beauty here.
The beauty of the wholesome mind. You're wishing the person receiving the blessing to have a wholesome state of mind, which is often manifests as beauty, as in spiritual beauty and the physiological impact of a peaceful mind, you might say. So could be the aura of the person with a wholesome state of mind. There's a certain beauty to it. So it's not so much physical beauty, although the physical beauty, people, good-looking people, that is a certain kind of karma that's come through from their past actions as well. But it's really the beauty that comes with sila, people who live in a moral way, have a wholesome state of mind, and the way that affects their kind of complexion, their aura, their being, their physical presence, as well as their state of mind. So you're wishing that. You're wishing people to be happy, basically, because where does happiness come from? It comes from wholesome states of mind. So you're wishing them to be beautiful because they're stress-free.
Sadhu.
Bit like babies, isn't it? And babies tend to look kind of beautiful because they have a certain good aura around them because they haven't yet experienced much stress. So they sort of have this sort of baby face beauty. It's that kind of thing.
Sadhu Lumpur. Another question. Dear Lumpur, some teachers are said to see what will happen in the future. If the future hasn't happened yet, what is it that they are actually seeing? Thank you.
And they're seeing a nimitta, and then they remember what the Buddha said. Nimittas are not sure. So even the most clearest premonition of the future, the wise meditator will always have a little awareness that this may happen, this may not happen. So some people get a lot of these nimittas, not everyone, but some people, and particularly, obviously the first factor would be that they have to have a peaceful mind, they have some samadhi. Often it's come through many generations, they've been practicing and developed samadhi. Often it's also partly wisdom, partly compassion for other beings. So people sometimes they know things or get to know things which they'll have a nimitta, a premonition. But at the same time, if they're truly wise, they also know this may happen, it may not happen. They're not fooled by their own nimittas, so they know, it's likely to happen, but it may not. So let's see. So it can be, in terms of Pali, you call it anagatayana, knowledge of the future. So the Buddha himself made some predictions. Other teachers have made predictions that seem to come true sometimes. I've told stories about, this monastery, teachers have come here, made a few predictions about things that happened here that seem to come true. Sometimes people go in the more worldly way, they can make a prediction, but that's dangerous because it can stimulate more greed, anger and delusion, more defilements. Sometimes you get people who can see possibilities of things that might happen, but they also know it's not certain, but they tell as a way of helping someone. They say, this may happen, if you do this, this may happen. But it's still up to the individual whether what they're going to do and decide with their life, isn't it? So, can I think of an example of that? There was a monk who was going off into the forest to a very remote cave, which was kind of a nice, secluded cave, and on the outside, a good place to practice meditation. And he was going there for the rains retreat, which is 3 months long, but it's the rains retreat, so it's a time when there's a lot of rain. And in the remote jungles of Thailand, which is where this took place, in the rainy season, well, obviously, in the rain, quite often you get a lot of mosquitoes, and mosquitoes often have malarial parasite. So the teacher said, you can go off to this cave, it's a nice place, good place to practice, but if you go there, you'll catch malaria. And malaria can be fatal if you don't get it treated. The monk thought about it, he said, well, it's a good place to practice anyway, I'm going to go anyway. So off he went, and a month later he came back for a visit with malaria. So he went off to practice knowing he might get malaria because this had been predicted. But he still did it, and he didn't die. He recovered from the malaria. He was treated for it. So sometimes predictions are like that. They're just warnings, or get ready. This may happen, and you don't always need a special kind of psychic knowledge to make predictions, do you? Sometimes we can make educated guesses and sort of see the way trends are going. Same with astrology. Astrology often they can make seemingly quite accurate predictions of things. Nevertheless, there's always room for change, for unpredictability. Even with the best nimitta, things can change. So a wise person never believes it 100%. They say, well, this may happen, or this is probably going to happen. And it may happen, or it may not happen.
Saralungpo. Are there any other questions?
That's probably enough for tonight. So, very nice to talk to you, and hope to talk to you again one day. Maybe, should be next week, I think.